Hello everyone! Welcome back to the Lowland Greenhouse here at Carlton Carnivores. I've got another plant spotlight for you guys today, and this one is a species of tropical pitcher plant that has kind of a tumultuous naming history behind it, as well as quite a popular history in cultivation. This is the most widespread species of Nepenthes in the Philippines, and that is Nepenthes graciliflora. I actually have two different variations of this plant right now. This is graciliflora surigao, which I'm actually just about to repot because he's in desperate need of it. You might notice because most of the older pitchers are starting to die off already. But I have this guy, and also what is referred to as Nepenthes graciliflora pink, which was once upon a time referred to as Nepenthes alata boschiana mimic, along with a couple other similar looking clones like this. This is a species that was originally described in 1912, but then was lumped in with the description for Nepenthes alata for decades after that. It was only in, I think, the early 2010s when the species was actually separated out again from Nepenthes alata and redescribed and recognized to be its own distinct species. Now, because of that long time where everyone decided that this was the same species as original Nepenthes alata, it has resulted in a lot of naming confusion within cultivation. Most Nepenthes alata that you see in cultivation, alata quote unquote, are actually either variations of Nepenthes graciliflora or the hybrid between graciliflora and ventricosa, which is now known as Nepenthes quote unquote ventrata. Because, again, that hybrid actually looks fairly similar to, in particular, it was probably the pink form or something similar to it. So ventrata actually looks very similar to this pink graciliflora, and so people just labeled it as, well, Nepenthes alata, because it's simple, easier to say, and also because there were some companies that didn't know that they had actually a hybrid on their hands, and then when the information came out, the name simply stuck, and it's been difficult to correct that ever since. But graciliflora, though, is, again, the most widespread Nepenthes in the Philippines. It's found on almost every single island except for Palawan, and found from the southern end of Mindanao almost all the way to the northern end of Luzon, which is the northernmost big island. It does miss a couple of the mountain ranges in the far north, and that is actually where Nepenthes alata actually takes over, because that species is a rare endemic. It's only found in a few mountain ranges in the far north of Luzon. But with that wide range comes a wide variation in appearance as well. On average, though, this is a species that produces vines can be up to 20 feet in length, with semi-petiolate leaves that come off this nice rounded stem. So the leaves tend to have, it's partly petiolate. You can see this one has actually more distinctive petioles than the pink form here, where the petioles are a little bit shorter and they kind of just mold right into the base of the stem there. But those leaves tend to be, they're either semi-ovate to lanceolate, and they come down to a very nice thin tip, off of which, of course, that thin tendril goes down and hangs the pitcher off of. Now, lower and upper pitchers on graciliflora tend to look fairly similar, but there are a few differences in them. The pink version here actually has a couple different variations of lowers. You get the really immature lower pitchers like this guy, who are almost cylindrical in shape but have kind of a little bit of a fat bottom here. Fully mature lowers tend to be a little more distinctive. They have an ovate lower third to half, and then it becomes narrower at the hip to a cylindrical or slightly funnel-shaped upper portion of the pitcher here. And these pitchers have pretty distinctive wings on the front. They're fairly thin wings, and they have very short fringes on them, but they are present down most of the length of the pitcher, up to a oval-shaped mouth, has a slight slant to it, actually fairly distinctive slant to it when you look at it from the side. And a peristome that is usually fairly simple, rounded. It can sometimes be a little more flared on the sides, especially on big, mature variations. These pictures don't quite show that off yet, but when they get really big to 6-8 inches tall, they will show that off. It flares out to the sides a little bit and then gets more rounded near the bottom and the top underneath a relatively simple ovular lid. Now again, the shape of that does vary a little bit. Some of them have a really, really pronounced bulbous lower portion. It can be almost like ball-shaped and then constrict at that hip up to the narrow portion. Others may be a little bit more simple and almost cylindrical. It's kind of hard to see, but there is a small lower pitcher forming on the Surigao plant here. It's fairly cylindrical all the way through, just a slight fattening in the bottom of there. And the coloration is quite variable in these guys. For the most part, they tend to be kind of uniform in appearance. They don't tend to express a lot of blotching or mottling on the pictures, which is more of an Alata trait actually. Instead, they tend to have fairly uniform, kind of blushy looks. They may be fully green, they may be fully red. They can be kind of intermediate like this one is, kind of green in the base and then blushing up to red up top. The Surigao form, when it's mature, the lower pitchers tend to be almost entirely kind of either greenish or fully like light red blushed. And then the peristome will usually either be solid or, again, in the Surigao form, like this guy, they do actually sport stripes on here. The upper pitchers are a little bit different. Now again, the Surigao form here is the one that's got upper pitchers on it right now. And you might notice, looking at it here, there are no wings on this pitcher. And that is a distinct, important trait that I'll talk about in a little bit. But when they form uppers, the tendril starts to loop around on itself. That bulbous portion may actually become even more bulbous and pronounced, either kind of ball-shaped or broadly funnel-shaped, coming up to, of course, that hip and then cylindrical upper pitcher. So that shape overall isn't too different, but that exaggerated bulbous portion might become a little bit more obvious in upper pitchers. The upper pitchers do tend to be lighter in coloration. In the forms that are kind of blushed, the uppers might have just a little bit of color around the lips, or they might turn completely green, except for, of course, maybe the stripes on the lip of the peristome, or the mottling that's usually present on the interior of some of these forms. Other forms may not have mottling, they may just be solid green, like the pink form here is. But those lack of wings is one of the distinctive traits that actually helps you tell apart this species from Nepenthes alata. Alata actually means winged, and so in upper pitchers in Nepenthes alata, you may either have fully formed wings on the uppers, or if those aren't present, they will usually at least have remnants of the wings around the mouth at least, and very distinctive ridges that run down the front of the pitcher. Graciliflora does not have that, and that's pretty uniform throughout all the forms of this species. Lower pitchers may or may not have wings, but the upper pitchers will nearly always lack them. Another trait is alata is a very fuzzy plant, especially on the pitchers, but also in the leaves. They tend to have this very dense, very fine white covering of hairs that covers most of the portions of the plant. On graciliflora, you may find hairs on the upper pitchers. The Surigao form in here in particular has very fuzzy, velvety pitchers, but the rest of the plant is glabrous. It does not have any of those hairs on it. They are completely smooth, waxy. And so those are two distinctive traits that you can use to tell the species apart. Another one is that petiole trait. Alata tends to have a much stronger petiole than graciliflora does, not always. As you can see, these guys, the Surigao form does have a fairly strong petiole, but the sides of the petiole sometimes will have more of a tendency to have winged sides, or simply expand. The leaf blade starts right from the base and opens out. So those are some of the traits that you can use to tell the difference between those two species. And so you can figure out if you actually have true alata or not when you receive a plant that's named Nepenthes alata, or if you actually have either graciliflora or ventrata. because Ventrata will also have those glabrous leaves. It will tend to have even less petiole than graciliflora does, because ventricosa has no petiole at all, basically, and the leaf just folds right into the base of the pitcher. Or not the pitcher, sorry, the stem. But that will help you tell whether or not you have the true alata. I will be discussing alata in another video eventually, because I do have the true species, and we'll try and show that off so people can recognize it. But more likely than not, you're going to end up with either Ventrata or some form of Nepenthes graciliflora. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're a beginning grower, because graciliflora, because it is so widespread, it is found in a wide variety of habitats, right from sea level almost to almost 5,000 feet in elevation. They are widespread and tolerant of a lot of different conditions. You will find them growing in peat swamps, as an epiphyte on the sides of trees, in mossy areas, on the sides of rocks and such. So they're very tolerant of a wide variety of conditions in cultivation as well. Now, like most Nepenthes, I grow these guys in roughly a standard 1:1:1 in my case, long fiber sphagnum, perlite, and washed cocoa chips mix. You can grow them in pure sphagnum if you live in a drier climate and you need something that needs to hold a little more moisture for longer. Or if you live in a really wet area, you can grow them in a much looser mix that's maybe mostly like pine bark chips and such. But they will tolerate any of those. The biggest thing, of course, is to keep it moist, but never sopping wet. You want the roots to be able to always have access to moisture, never to dry out, but you also don't want them to be sopping wet and flooded, because they will rot under those conditions. Now, these guys do appreciate a lot of light. They can tolerate somewhat lower light levels than some other species, but they still appreciate as much light as you can give them, up to almost full sun levels. The brighter light you get, the thinner the leaves will become, and the bigger the pitchers, and the more colorful the pitchers will be, of course, because light gives them the energy they need to produce those traps. So as much light as you can, either full sun, partial sun dappled, or as strong an artificial light as you can provide them. They will be happiest under that. Temperatures, again, these guys are pretty adaptable. They can go from pure lowland conditions, because they will grow right down to sea level, all the way up. They will grow happily in highland conditions as well. So temperatures anywhere between 70 and almost 90 degrees Fahrenheit during the day. And at night, the temperatures can be anywhere between 50 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit as well. So very tolerant of the wide variety of conditions, makes them really easy to grow as a starting plant, a house plant and such. And they're just as easy to propagate as well. I have not gotten these guys to flower, but if you do, they're dioecious like all Nepenthes. Each plant will only be either male or female. So when it blooms, you will either get flowers that produce pollen, or flowers that receive pollen and produce the seeds. Those seeds will take a few months to develop if you're lucky enough to have a female and get to pollinate it. And you simply sow those seeds on a nice warm bed of milled sphagnum moss or peat and let them sprout, and it'll take 2 to 3 years for them to start reaching mature sizes. Or if you have a mature plant and it's starting to grow, as you can see, this guy is starting to produce a basal, so once that becomes established, I will probably cut back the main vine, and you simply take cuttings where the vine starts to go woody. This is a lot harder to root and grow, so I will often just throw that away, but you can try and root it if you want. But where it starts to become green and fleshy again, that's where you want to cut. You can just cut 2 to 4 node length sections, trim the leaves if you want, and stick that into sphagnum moss or simply pure water and leave that for a few months, and eventually most of those cuttings will start producing new roots that you can plant out. And again, because this species has so many different variations, you can grow quite a range of plants all in one species. You can have striped ones, you can have red ones, you can have blushed ones, you can have all green if you're able to look for enough variations. Usually the blushed ones like pink here are going to be the easiest to find, and they get to be pretty impressive plants as well. So again, a really good beginner's plant if you want something that's easy to grow, fairly flashy, and They will get fairly large. Again, they like to vine once they're mature, but they're not the fastest vining plants either. So you can keep them fairly compact and you can trim off the vines as you need and keep them a little bushier if you don't have a big growing space either. Now that is about all that I have for that species. If there's anything that I have missed, if you have questions, make sure to leave them in the comments below the video here. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. I will be doing a video eventually on Nepenthes allowed as well. So if you enjoy educational videos like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Turn on the black bell so you don't miss anything coming up. And if you enjoy educational materials like this, you can find out more information. The blog and database are on my website where I talk about all the plants and animals that I work with. I'm trying to always upload new information, new files and such on there. And I'm always posting new photos and video tidbits on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. at Carlton Carnivores. If you'd like to help support in a more financial manner, you can buy plants at the website shop, where I have all sorts of stuff there. There's also merch. You can also contact me if you're looking for new pets. I sometimes have baby snakes available as well, if you're into that sort of thing. Or you can become a Patreon member to help support as well. Members there do get early access to the videos, access to the monthly seed contest where I'm giving away things that you won't find most of the time on my shop, or you get a chance just for the cost of membership to get something that might be a little more expensive in the shop. You also get exclusive merchandise and other benefits as well. You can also do one-time donations at coffee or simply contact me for other ways. But all the links for these things will be in the video description below. But until next time, I'm Hawk and Carlton, and this is Carlton Carnivores.